I'm not saying I own a squirrel army, Sergeant Leo Vance said, squinting at the massive alien soldier across the table. I'm just saying if the day comes, they'll show up. The laughter around the mess hall wasn't subtle. In fact, one of the Quarvan soldiers, a hulking species made of what looked like moss-covered boulders, choked on his rehydrated root stew. "Tell me, human," groaned Commander Zarktel, wiping goo from his chin, "do your rodent warriors wear tiny helmets?" "Only on Thursdays," Leo replied with a wink. That was how it always went. Leo Vance, Deathworlder, combat veteran, and Earth's unofficial ambassador of WTF, was known across the Joint Species Battalion as the guy who thought talking to animals wasn't just possible, it was practical military strategy. It didn't help that Earth's biosphere was infamous for being a galactic horror show. Most species had learned to respect humans purely by reading zoological reports. But respect didn't always translate to belief, especially not here. Not on Trellon 6, a jungle moon so dense and wild it made the Amazon look like a suburban park. The battalion had been deployed to secure an outpost near the southern ridge where sensors had picked up movement. Not ships, not patrols, just movement. And that's when things started getting weird. The next morning, Leo stood at the perimeter with his squad, half human, half alien. The humidity hit like a wet pillow, and the jungle chirped, growled, and occasionally screamed in the background. "This place smells like an open wound," muttered Private Gel, a Lurkin scout with translucent skin that shimmered in the light. "That's probably because something's bleeding," Leo muttered, lifting his rifle. Zarktel trudged up beside them, his mossy skin pulsing faintly. "You humans call this nature, yes? Back home we sterilize our wild zones every month. Fire, acid, then a bleach rinse. You must be fun at parties." "I don't have parties. I have tactical retreats with snacks." Leo grinned and took a knee, brushing his fingers along the soft undergrowth. "This place is humming, like it's nervous." "Plants do not get nervous," Zarktel said. "You've never met kudzu," Leo replied. They moved out in formation, a dozen beings picking their way through vines thicker than a man's arm. The trees loomed high overhead, filtering sunlight into green shafts like stage lighting. Insects the size of golf balls hovered in lazy spirals, and once they passed a carcass of something vaguely pig-shaped that had been neatly sliced in half, no predator in sight. Still, nothing attacked, nothing even moved, until the silence hit. 1 second, the jungle was a chaotic orchestra. The next, it was gone. Total silence. Everyone froze. "What happened?" Gel whispered. Leo's head slowly turned, eyes narrowing. "Listen." "We are," Zarktel snapped. "That's the problem." "No, listen. The air changed." The Quarvan scoffed. "You are imagining things again, Vance." But Leo wasn't listening to him anymore. He stepped forward, deeper into the hush, until he reached a clearing, small, maybe 10 meters across, with moss-covered roots forming strange mounds at the center. The others followed reluctantly. And then they saw it. At the far end of the clearing, hunched like a nightmare stitched together from teeth, claws, and shadows, was a Ralthur, the jungle apex predator. 6 legs, 2 grasping arms, 1 more lined with 3 rotating jaws. Every creature on this moon feared it, and for good reason. Zarktel raised his plasma launcher. "Fall back, defensive." "Don't." Leo's voice was firm. "What?" "Put the weapon down," Leo said, eyes locked on the creature. "You've lost your mind." "Maybe, but I'm the only one here it hasn't eaten yet." And with that, Leo stepped into the clearing. Gel hissed, "He's going to die." "No," Zarktel growled, lowering the weapon slightly. "He's going to get us killed." But Leo didn't care. He walked slowly, hands out, not in surrender, but in greeting. He whistled, a soft, melodic warble that rose and fell like birdsong. Then he clicked his tongue once, twice. The alien predator shifted its massive head and let out a low, guttural rumble. "Easy now," Leo whispered. "We're not here to ruin your turf." The Ralthur's secondary eyes blinked, the mandibles twitching. "I know you've seen the others, the scouts, the drones, the ones who burn everything they don't understand." He stepped closer. "We're not like them. We're listening." The creature growled again, but it didn't pounce. It sniffed, then chuffed, then did something no one expected. It backed away. Leo turned slightly and looked at the squad still frozen at the tree line. "See? Told you I spoke jungle." Zarktel was speechless, which for Zarktel was like a meteor shower. Leo jogged back with the kind of swagger only a man who just negotiated with a biomechanical apex predator could possess. "You're insane," the commander finally said. "I'm effective," Leo corrected. "Big difference." Gel shook his head. "What even was that noise you made?" Leo shrugged. "I don't know. Used to talk to coyotes like that back home. That was a 10-meter murder beast with scissor legs." "Coyotes are worse." Zarktel was still processing. "You de-escalated a Ralthur with whistling." Leo slapped his shoulder. "And now you owe me an apology." "For what?" "For mocking the squirrel army." The commander made a sound somewhere between a groan and a prayer. It wasn't until they returned to camp that anyone spoke more than 5 words in a row. Even then, it started with Gel, standing by the water purifier, muttering, "Squirrel army my ass." Leo Vance sat cross-legged on a crate, sweat drying on his shirt, watching a beetle the size of a grapefruit trying to wrestle a discarded ration pack into the shadows. He sipped his canteen and looked entirely too relaxed for someone who just had a heart-to-heart with a jungle apocalypse beast. Zarktel paced like a short-circuited warbot. "You violated protocol. You exposed the entire unit. "I didn't violate anything," Leo interrupted. "I improvised." "You approached an apex predator and de-escalated it. You're welcome." "I don't even know what you did," Zarktel barked. "Was that Earth military training?" Leo stretched. "Technically. Number that was just me remembering how I once stopped a mountain lion from eating my tent buddy in Yosemite with a flute solo and a pocket full of beef jerky." "You're being ridiculous." "I'm being alive, which you weren't going to be if you'd fired that launcher." Zarktel opened his mouth, realized Leo was right, and then sat down heavily. Later that night, the squad gathered around the campfire, or more accurately, the blue glowing heat stone that pretended to be one. Gel poked at his food pouch like it might bite him. "So what? You just talk to animals?" Leo looked up from a data slate. "Not all animals, just the ones that'll listen." "What does that even mean?" Leo smirked. "It means every creature speaks. Most of you just never shut up long enough to hear it." Zarktel snorted. "This is nonsense. Sentience and animal instinct are not comparable." "Sure," Leo replied. "If you define intelligence by the number of political meetings someone can survive without chewing through a wall. Which, I remind you, is not normal behavior." Leo pointed his fork. "Have you ever had to sit through a 5-hour regional defense funding session while your translator chip mislabels all currency as spicy beans? I have. I bit the wall on purpose." A few chuckles spread around the squad. Even Zarktel's jaw flexed in something dangerously close to a grin. The next day brought orders from the command dome, sweep sector G12, motion spikes again. No sign of enemy tech, but possible nests or something moving in packs. Zarktel didn't argue when Leo was put on point. They moved out with nerves high and weapons higher, creeping through a denser stretch of jungle. Trees arched so close together it felt like being swallowed alive. The sky disappeared entirely under thick canopies. Halfway through the march, they heard it. Not silence this time. Something worse. Whimpering. "Do you hear that?" Gel asked, his translucent skin paling. Leo nodded, raising his hand. "Stay here." He vanished into the foliage like it owed him money. Zarktel clenched his jaw. "He's going to get eaten." "No," Gel muttered. "He's going to adopt whatever's making that noise." 3 minutes later, Leo returned carrying a bundle. It squirmed. It hissed. It had way too many legs. "What in the name of the first flame is that?" Zarktel demanded. "Baby Krenth," Leo said. "Barely hatched. Left behind." Gel nearly dropped his rifle. "Krenth? As in the apex pack hunters that don't stop eating once they start?" Leo gently held the wriggling creature, which responded by chirping and licking his chin. "Yeah, this one's friendly, though." Zarktel rubbed his temples. "We are not bringing it with us." Leo started walking. Too late. He named himself already. It'd be rude. He what? Called himself Merch, I think. Or maybe that was a sneeze. Either way, he's rolling with us. Zarktel groaned. This is not how military squads operate. Clearly you've never worked with Earth Special Forces. The trek continued. Merch, now nestled in Leo's chest pack, made soft purring clicks and occasionally growled at birds with too much attitude. The jungle seemed quieter, less threatening, which should have been the first warning sign. Because when they reached Sector G12, the trees were wrong. They weren't just tall, they were burnt. Charred black spires twisted into claw-like shapes. The ground was scorched, and the air smelled of old metal and electricity. Zarktel scanned with his drone. No fauna, no movement, but the soil. Leo knelt and sniffed. This isn't fire, it's a biodisruptor. Gel stiffened. You mean? Yeah, Leo said grimly. Someone's testing weapons here, something galactic law banned 5 centuries ago. Zarktel's eyes darkened. You're saying there's another faction on this moon? Not just another faction, someone who thought this place was too alive and wanted to fix that. That night, the mood was dead quiet. Even Merch seemed sullen, burrowed deep into Leo's jacket. Zarktel stood beside the heatstone, arms folded. Why do you think the Ralthur let you live? Leo stared into the false fire. I didn't threaten it. I listened. That's more than the last guys who walked into its clearing did, I bet. Do you think it knows about the weapons testing? Yeah, Leo said softly. I think the whole jungle does. And you think it might help us? Leo stood, cracking his neck. I think it already did. We're still alive, aren't we? By morning, the jungle had changed again. It hummed. Every vine, leaf and flower seemed alert, watching. Zarktel noticed it too. It's waiting. Leo smiled grimly and scratched Merch behind the head spikes. It is. Gel looked around nervously. Waiting for what? Leo slung his rifle over his shoulder. Waiting for me to introduce it to the rest of you. Gel tripped over a root that hadn't been there 5 seconds ago. I swear that wasn't there a second ago, he muttered, brushing dirt off his knees. Nope, Leo said, eyes scanning the undergrowth like it was breathing. Wasn't. Jungle's testing us now. Zarktel's eye ridges twitched. Testing. Leo crouched by the root, giving it a respectful nod, then stood. Yeah. Think of this whole biome as one massive nervous system. You're either a parasite, a threat, or someone it'll let walk away. Gel gripped his plasma rifle tighter. And us? Leo smiled. Still in the interview phase. They stepped forward into a clearing so quiet it hurt the ears. The foliage formed a perfect circle, vines curling overhead like a cathedral. Merch chirped once and stilled. Then the Ralthur stepped out. Not 1. 5. Each of the massive predators stood taller than any squad member, mottled with green-black fur, their limbs structured in strange asymmetry, evolution's idea of jazz. Their golden eyes glowed dimly like embers, fixed directly on Leo. Zarktel reached for his blaster. Leo didn't move. Don't. They're apex. They're also listening. The Ralthur's leader stepped forward. A scar ran diagonally across its snout. It exhaled, deep and low. Leo nodded. He's speaking. You understand that? Not with words. With rhythm. With presence. Leo, Gel whispered. You're about to die to poetry. But Leo knelt, placing Merch gently on the ground and bowing his head. Then he looked up. He says they saw what scorched G12, says they remember before our kind walked on 2 legs, before tech, before the sky even looked like it does now. Zarktel frowned. So they're old. Leo nodded. Ancient. And they've decided we either help them stop what's coming, or they burn it all down, starting with us. The air felt like it tightened, every breath heavier. Gel coughed. Do they want something? Leo looked at each alien in the eye. They want blood, but not ours. An hour later, the squad had their orders. We're helping ancient jungle gods now, Gel muttered as he calibrated his rifle. Cool, totally normal Wednesday. Zarktel didn't argue. He just adjusted the heat suppressors on his boots. Leo checked his wrist slate. There's a relay tower about 6 clicks north. If someone's been testing illegal weapons, there's a good chance that relay's been hijacked or is being spoofed. We knock it offline. We sever comms. Cut off the rot at the roots. Gel scowled. What happens if they know we're coming? Leo grinned. Then we let the jungle in first. The route to the relay wasn't marked on any map. Leo didn't use a compass. He just listened. Sometimes the trees leaned. Sometimes a path opened that hadn't existed. Once, a series of leaves fell in a pattern that led them straight to an overgrown stream bed, and under it, an old pre-galactic tech tunnel. Zarktel kept muttering under his breath, "This is madness." But the tunnel led them right to the relay tower's shadow, which wasn't a relay. It was a dome, covered in thermal camouflage, buzzing with low-frequency pulses. Not a relay, a command bunker. Leo's expression dropped. This isn't rogue tech. Gel's stomach twisted. Who the hell builds this in a wildlife preserve? Zarktel pulled out a scanner. Signals being bounced to 6 different satellites. This is military-grade coordination. Leo stepped forward slowly, eyes narrowed. Not just military, corporate military. Zarktel looked up. Earth's? Leo laughed bitterly. Worse, third-party mercs, the kind that get hired to clear problem zones without leaving official fingerprints. Inside the dome, they could see faint movement, armor-clad silhouettes. Not aliens, humans. Zarktel's mandibles flared. Your kind is doing this? Leo didn't answer at first, just adjusted his vest. My kind's complicated. They hit the dome at dawn. Zarktel laid suppressive fire while Gel looped a mimic drone to distract the eastern sentries. Leo, flanked by 2 Ralther, charged straight through the wall. Literally. The beasts didn't just walk, they hunted. Silent, fluid, and terrifying. No screams came from the guards, just the sounds of things being unmade. Leo found the command terminal in the bunker's core. Gel, give me access. I thought you talked to animals, not code. Leo smacked the terminal. Language is language, just lazier when it's human. The screen blinked. Access granted. He started broadcasting on all frequencies. This is Sergeant Leo Vance. You're standing in a sovereign conservation zone protected under Galactic Law 221-D. You've deployed banned tech. You've scorched sacred terrain. The local inhabitants would like a word. Spoiler, it involves teeth. He hit send. Then he smiled. Let the forest eat. By nightfall, the mercs were gone, or absorbed. The dome stood quiet and still, burned at the edges. Vines already crept through cracks in the walls. Zarktel stared at the devastation. You didn't just call for help, you declared war. Leo scratched Murch's chin as the baby predator purred against his arm. No, Commander. I translated a threat into a language they understood. Back at base, the debrief was chaos. Earth's diplomats tried to issue apologies, denials, the usual. But one detail leaked. The Ralther were seen on galactic news feeds, not attacking, just watching, silent, unblinking, and behind them a single human stood, covered in mud, blood, and vines, smiling. The footage went viral. Not the part with the bodies, not the explosions, not even the collapsed bunker that had once broadcast encrypted signals across 3 sectors. No, what caught the galaxy's attention was the still image. A man, half-caked in mud and blood, holding what appeared to be a purring alien beast like it was a house cat, smiling like he'd just finished planting a vegetable garden instead of dismantling a Black Ops military post with sentient apex predators. Captioned simply, "When Earth sends a translator, expect an extinction-level conversation." The memes came next. But the fear was already viral. In the jungle, Leo was talking to a vine. Zarktel leaned over to Gel. Do you think it talks back? Honestly? At this point, I'd be surprised if it didn't. Leo stood up, brushing leaves off his cargo pants. It does, but not in words. Vines are more into sarcasm and strangulation. Zarktel tilted his head. That explains your friendships. Leo cracked a grin. Come on, we've got one more loose end. The mercenary leader had fled during the raid. Commander Halverson, Earthborn, ex-special ops turned corporate asset, known across fringe worlds for solving problems with plausible deniability. Leo knew his kind, knew the mindset, knew exactly where he'd run. Old mining camp, 10 clicks east, Leo said as he loaded his gear. Used during the resource rush before the preserve was declared off-limits. Hidden, shielded, and has a fallback shuttle. Zarktel narrowed his eyes. You're sure? Leo didn't look back. He's the kind of man who writes survival plans before breakfast and betrayal strategies by lunch. And dinner? Dinners for bribery. They moved through the jungle in silence, not because of stealth, though they were silent, but because the jungle was watching. Every leaf seemed to breathe. Every root paused before letting your foot land. Every sound held meaning. Even Gel had stopped complaining. They reached the mining camp by dusk, a rusty dome camouflaged in decay. Power flickered inside, a single heat signature. Leo didn't bother sneaking. He walked right up and knocked. Halverson opened the door with a gun in hand. Leo waved. Howdy. Vance. That's me. Why aren't you dead? Leo gestured behind him, where two massive Ralther stood like statues. Because I speak fluent Deathworld. Halverson didn't lower his gun. You're insane. Little bit. Keeps me interesting. Halverson eyed the creatures. You think they're your pets? Nope, I'm theirs. Big difference. Gel whispered to Zarktel, I think I'm witnessing psychological warfare in real time. Zarktel nodded solemnly. And I think it's working. Inside the bunker, the truth came fast. Halverson had been hired by a joint corporate syndicate, extract exotic DNA samples, test atmospheric manipulation, clear the land for future terraforming contracts. Problem: the land was alive. Not metaphorically, literally. The jungle's ecosystem wasn't just interconnected. It was intelligent. It had memory. It could learn. And it had decided that humanity was a virus, until one human listened. Leo folded his arms. You made a mistake. Oh? Which one? You thought Earth rules applied out here. But out here, we're the invasive species, and the jungle doesn't do courtrooms, it does justice. Halverson reached for a detonator under the table. Leo didn't flinch. Go ahead, blow us up. Won't matter. Why? Because the second you touch that, the jungle knows, and it doesn't forgive. Halverson hesitated, then screamed, because the floor pulsed, rose, and dragged him down. The root system ate him whole. Zarktel watched in horrified fascination. That was, Leo shrugged, express trial, life sentence. Back at base, Command was furious. You went rogue. No, Leo said, feet propped on the briefing table. I went native. You let alien beasts execute a fellow human. Correction, I didn't stop them. That's not the same thing. You've endangered diplomatic ties. Leo stood, face hardening. Number you did. You let private interests burn sacred land for profit. I just made sure the jungle remembered who lit the match. Silence. Until one admiral, far older, leaned forward. What's their price? Leo blinked. What? The Ralther, the jungle, whatever it is. What do they want to not declare war on every colony world with a tree? Leo thought about it. Thought about the way the vines curled when he whispered. Thought about the feeling of being judged by the entire ecosystem. They want us to listen, he said softly. And if we won't? He let the rest hang. Later that night, Leo stood at the edge of the jungle. Murch was asleep in his arms, purring like thunder. Zarktel approached. Is it true? What? That you once talked down a Titan worm using nothing but a flute and bad poetry? Leo smirked. It was actually a kazoo. You're insane. Fully certified. They stood in silence for a moment. You know, Zarktel said, I used to think humans were just chaotic anomalies, dangerous, unpredictable. But now, Leo raised an eyebrow. Now what? Now I think you're the only ones who understand the universe's real language. Leo smiled. Pain. Number madness. The new treaty wasn't written in ink. It was written in pollen, in rustling leaves, in roots that wrapped gently around supply crates, in birdsong timed to Morse patterns, and, perhaps most importantly, in a single handwritten note taped to a hover drone that read, "We forgive." Once Leo framed it. Not because it was poetic, but because the jungle had learned sarcasm. The Galactic Diplomatic Summit was hosted in a glass dome just outside Earth's orbit. Neutral space, beautiful view of the Pacific, one malfunctioning coffee machine that seemed to despise Zarktel specifically. Representatives from 42 species attended, but only one human sat at the table with no military rank, no insignia, no title, just a mud-stained jacket and an alien cat asleep in his lap. Leo Vance, ambassador by mistake, hero by exhaustion. "State your demands," said Chancellor Relvar, a crystalline diplomat whose body refracted disdain like a disco ball. Leo yawned. "No more corporate expeditions into jungles that breathe. That is unreasonable." "No," Leo said. "What you're used to is unreasonable. I've watched trees ambush tanks. I've seen vines knit themselves into nooses. I've negotiated with ecosystems. You're lucky I'm still using words." A pause. Then, a voice from the back. Zarktel, adjusting his translator badge. "He speaks for the living world," Relvar hissed. "And what does the living world want?" Leo grinned. "Snacks." The new accord was officially titled the Terra-Fauna Non-Aggression and Ecological Autonomy Pact. Unofficially, the Don't Mess with the Jungle Treaty. Colonization was paused. Terraforming plans suspended. The jungle worlds were marked red on every star map. But there was one exception, Earth. Because Earth wasn't just a death world anymore. It was now considered an interpreter. Leo hated the fame. He didn't mind the gifts. Alien ale was top tier, but the constant interviews, parades, and friendly surprise visits from ministers were exhausting. Worse, he hadn't had 5 minutes alone with Murch since the furball got his own fan mail. Still, Leo kept one ritual. Once a week, he returned to the original jungle preserve. Alone. No cameras, no advisors, just silence. And on the third week, the jungle replied. With a letter. It wasn't on paper. It was written into the arrangement of stones on a riverside path. A cipher Leo had once taught the local kids. A joke only he would catch. It read, "We have a new problem. Come talk." Leo sighed. I knew retirement was a myth. The new problem had wings and flamethrowers. A rogue military faction, human technically, had decided that jungle negotiation was weakness. They launched a preemptive cleansing operation. It lasted 4 minutes. Their footage, cut off mid-scream, only raised more questions. But Leo knew the truth. He arrived at the scorched zone 2 hours later, alone. The jungle was angry and afraid. It didn't want revenge. It wanted clarity. Leo sat down in the ash, Murch curled on his shoulder and whispered, "You've tasted violence. You didn't like it. That's human too." Vines wrapped around him, not tightly, but like a friend asking for comfort. He kept speaking. "Not all of us are monsters. Some of us just scream at the wrong shadows." That night, the jungle spared the remaining soldiers, left them unharmed, just changed. They returned wide-eyed and quiet, forever quiet. One of them carved into a wall. "The vines showed me my mother's voice, and then forgave me." Leo read the quote later and nodded. "Yeah," he whispered, "that tracks." Zarktel met him afterward, eyes flicking nervously. "You're playing with fire." Leo shook his head. "Number, I'm playing with empathy. Fire plays with me. What if next time it doesn't forgive?" Leo looked out at the jungle, glowing faintly in the dusk. Then maybe it's finally learned to be human. The galaxy moved on. Treaties shifted, wars cooled, cultures adapted. But every species that expanded into green zones now sent one human consultant first, usually unarmed, often eccentric, always fluent in madness. Years later, a child asked Leo during a school tour, "Is it true you once tamed an entire planet?" Leo crouched down to the kid's eye level, smile warm and eyes distant. "No, kiddo," he said. "I just listened when everyone else was shouting." The child blinked. "Is that all it takes?" Leo patted the dirt. The grass quivered happily beneath his palm. "That," he said, "and knowing when to shut up.